"We don't celebrate Christmas here," Jacob Hale said, one hand braced on the doorframe, the other holding the lantern so its light spilled onto three small faces gone blue with cold. "Now go on back to town before the road freezes over." The oldest of them, a girl no more than 11, didn't move. Snow had crusted in her eyebrows, and she was shaking so hard her teeth clicked together, but she looked him square in the eye. "Please, mister? We've been walking since before dark. My sisters can't feel their feet no more." Jacob looked past her to the two smaller ones huddled together. The littlest one, maybe 5 years old, her lips a shade he didn't like at all. He knew that color. He'd seen it on his wife's hands the winter she died, 2 years back to the very week, and something in his chest went hard and cold as the porch boards under his feet. "Where's your folks?" he said. Not a question so much as a wall he was building. "Our mama's gone," the girl said. "Papa took work up at the Larson mine and said he'd send for us come spring. We've been staying with our aunt in town, but she took sick and there weren't no room and no money," and she stopped, swallowed, and squared her shoulders like she was bracing for him to shut the door. "I know we ain't got no business asking you for nothing, but I saw your chimney smoking from the road and I didn't know where else to go." He should have sent them on to the Widow Prude's, or to the church, or anywhere that wasn't his house, because his house didn't have room in it for children, hadn't had room for anything living in it since Sarah passed. But the wind was screaming down off the ridge and the littlest girl's knees buckled, just slightly, just enough. And before he decided anything at all, his arms were already reaching out and pulling all three of them through the door, inside. The fire was low, the way he liked it these days. Just enough heat to keep the pipes from freezing and no more. He hadn't seen a reason to burn good wood on comfort. Now he built it up fast, shoving in logs he'd been rationing since November. And the girls crowded so close to the hearth, he had to warn them back before their skirts caught. "What are your names?" he asked, mostly to have something to say that wasn't a question about why God kept sending small cold things to his door to December's running. "I'm Ruth," the oldest said. "This here's Mary, she's 8, and the little one's Eliza." Eliza had gone quiet, staring at the fire like she'd never seen one. Her small hands stretched toward it, though she flinched when the warmth hit her fingers too fast. Jacob had seen frostbite before. He fetched a basin of cool water, not warm, and made her soak her hands slow, the way his own mother had taught him 30 years back on a ranch 3 states east of here. "You'll want to go slow with that," he told her. "Warm, too quick, and it hurts worse." Eliza looked up at him with eyes that seemed too old for her face. "Are you going to send us back out there?" "No," Jacob said, and the word came out rougher than he meant it, like it had been sitting in his throat a long while waiting for the right moment to leave. "No, you're not going back out in that." He fed them what he had, which wasn't much salt, pork and beans and hard biscuits, nothing like a Christmas supper. But they ate like it was a feast at some rich man's table, and watching them, Jacob felt an old ache open up in him that he'd spent 2 years nailing shut. Sarah had wanted children. They'd tried for 6 years and lost 2 before either had drawn breath. And then she'd gone and died of a fever the doctor couldn't name. And Jacob had decided somewhere in the wreckage of that winter that wanting things was a fool's game. He wasn't going to play anymore. "You got a wife, mister?" Mary asked, licking bean juice off her spoon with a frankness only an 8th-year-old could manage. "Mary," Ruth hissed. "It's all right," Jacob said, though it wasn't. Not really. "I did," she passed on. "That why you don't do Christmas?" Mary pressed, and Ruth looked mortified, but Jacob found he didn't mind the question near as much as he'd have guessed. "Something like that," he said, and stood to clear the plates before any of them could ask more. He set them up in the spare room that night, the room that had once been meant for a nursery and had sat empty and swept and useless for years. and he gave them every quilt in the house, even though it left his own bed thin. And he told himself it was one night, just one night. And come morning, he'd ride into town and find out what in the hell. The aunt was thinking letting 3 children wander a mountain road in a snowstorm. But morning came, white and howling. Snow piled to the windowsills, the kind of storm that didn't let a man ride anywhere at all. Jacob stood at the window with his coffee going cold in his hand and understood, with a sinking that settled somewhere behind his ribs, that these girls were his responsibility now, at least until the roads cleared. And he had not the first idea what to do with that. "You don't gotta talk to us if you don't want," Ruth said from the doorway, watching him with the same wariness he imagined he wore on his own face most days. "We can keep to the spare room. We know how to be quiet. We got good at it, staying with Aunt Vivian." Something about the phrase "got good at it" snagged in him like a hook. "What's that mean?" he said. "Got good at being quiet." Ruth's chin lifted a fraction, the way a person does when they're deciding whether telling the truth is worth the risk. Aunt Vivian's got 6 of her own and no husband since last spring, and no money for feeding 3 more. She never said it mean, but she didn't have to. We learned not to ask for seconds. We learned not to cry where she could hear. She said this plain, without any bid for pity, and that plainness was worse than tears would have been. "I ain't asking you to feel sorry for us, mister. I just didn't want you thinking we'd be trouble." Jacob set his coffee down because his hand had started to shake, and he didn't want her seeing that. "You're not trouble," he said. "Storm's not letting up. Reckon you'll be here through Christmas, like it or not." "We don't need Christmas," Ruth said quickly, too quickly, like she was trying to spare him something. "We're just glad for the roof." But that evening, he caught Mary at the frost-fogged window, breath clouding the glass, drawing a crooked little tree in the condensation with one finger. And Eliza sat near the hearth, quietly moving her lips. And when he asked what she was doing, she near jumped out of her skin. "Nothing," she said too fast. "Eliza was just saying the Christmas prayer Mama taught us. The one about the star." Her face went red, like she'd been caught stealing. "I know you don't do Christmas here. I wasn't trying to make you mad. You didn't make me mad," Jacob said, and found his voice had gone thick and strange. He walked out onto the porch after that, into cold sharp enough to clear a man's head, and stood there a long while looking at nothing, listening to the wind, feeling something in him crack loose that had been frozen, solid a long time. Sarah used to sing on Christmas Eve. She had a terrible voice, flat and reaching, and she'd sing anyway, standing at that same window, and he used to tease her about scaring the cattle. He hadn't let himself think of that sound in 2 years. Now it was in his ears, clear as if she stood right beside him, and he understood, standing out there with the cold biting his face, that he had not stopped celebrating Christmas because it hurt too much. He had stopped because letting it come back meant admitting how much he still had left to lose. He went back inside. The girls were pretending to be asleep, badly. All 3 breathing in that too careful rhythm of children who are actually wide awake and listening for the sound of a door. "I got an old trunk in the barn loft," Jacob said into the dark. "Sarah's trunk. There might be some things in there due for decorating, if any of you wanted to." He heard the covers rustle. Ruth's voice came out small. "You sure? We don't want to make you sad." "I'm already sad," Jacob said, surprising himself with how easy the truth came once he started letting it out. "Reckon it can't get much worse for trying. Might as well try something else alongside it." The morning after. Storm still raging outside, but the mood inside changed entire. He brought the trunk down from the loft himself, snow crusting his beard, and set it in the front room like a man setting down something holy. Inside were strings of dried cranberries gone brittle with age, a few carved wooden ornaments Sarah's father had made, a length of red ribbon yellowed at the edges, and, folded at the bottom. A small quilted stocking with the initial S, stitched crooked across it in Sarah's own careless hand. Ruth lifted it out, careful as glass. Was this hers? She made it the first Christmas we were married. Said she'd make one for every child we had after. Never got the chance. He said it steady, no crack in his voice. It was almost proud of himself for that, right up until Eliza came and pressed her small, cold hand into his without a word. The way children do when they understand grief before they've got words big enough to hold it. They spent that whole snowbound day stringing cranberries and hanging ornaments on a scraggly pine bough Jacob cut from the yard and jammed into a bucket of rocks. And Mary sang half the words to 3 different carols, wrong and loud. And for the first time in 2 years, Jacob Hale laughed out loud in his own house. A real laugh, surprised clean out of him. It was near evening, with the fire crackling and the girls dozing warm and full for the first time in what he guessed was a long while, that Ruth came and sat beside him on the bench by the hearth. "Can I tell you something?" she said, "and you won't send us off after? Nothing you say is sending you anywhere in this storm. Ruth, say your piece." She twisted her hands in her lap. "Papa ain't sending for us in spring. He wrote Aunt Vivian back in October saying the mine work wasn't paying and he didn't know when, or if he'd have enough to bring us on. Aunt Vivian didn't want to tell us. I found the letter myself, reading when I oughtn't have been." Her voice wobbled, finally, the crack showing through the careful composure she'd worn like armor since she'd knocked on his door. "I've been trying to be brave for Mary and Eliza, but I'm scared. Mister, I'm scared nobody's ever coming for us at all." Jacob felt that confession land in him like a stone dropped in still water, ripples going out to every corner of the ache he'd been carrying. He thought of Sarah's empty stocking. He thought of 6 years of wanting and 2 babies buried before they'd had names spoken over them, and a wife gone quiet in a bed he still slept on one side of, like she might come back to claim the other. He thought about how a man could spend 2 years building walls so high he forgot there was a world on the other side worth walking into. "Ruth," he said, "look at me." She did, eyes bright and scared and trying so hard not to cry. "I can't promise your papa's gonna send for you. I don't know the man, and I won't lie to you and say I do. But I can promise you this house has room. It's had room a long while, sitting empty, waiting on somebody to fill it. I'm not saying that lightly, and I'm not saying it because the storms got me soft in the head. I'm saying it because I mean it plain. You don't hardly know us. I know enough. I know your sister drew a Christmas tree on my window with her finger, too scared to ask for one out loud. I know your littlest sister said a prayer under her breath, so quiet I almost missed it, in a house that hadn't heard a prayer said in it in 2 years. And I know you walked through a snowstorm carrying both of them on your back, more or less, and never once asked for anything for yourself." He had to stop and steady his own voice there. "That's not nothing to know. Ruth, that's plenty." She cried then, finally, the tears she'd probably been saving up since her mother died, and Jacob sat with her and let her, because he understood better than most men alive what it cost to hold a thing in that long. The storm broke 3 days after Christmas, and Jacob rode into town the moment the roads allowed, snow still waist high in the drifts, to find the aunt and settle things proper. He found Vivian Marsh, thin and worn and near sick herself with worry, and she wept outright when he told her the girls were warm and fed and safe, and wept harder, ashamed. When he asked about the letter from their father, "Didn't know how to tell them," she admitted. "I got 6 of my own hungry and I couldn't feed 3 more besides. And I didn't have it in me to say their papa'd given up on sending for them. I was hoping for some kind of miracle before I had to." "Well," Jacob said, "seems the miracle came knocking on my door instead of yours. I want to take them improper, foster them if the law allows, or adopt them outright if their father signs off on it. I've got the land, I've got the house, and God help me. I've got the room in me I didn't know I still had. Vivian looked at him like she was trying to decide if he was serious. And then, like she might collapse from relief when she decided he was. You'd do that? For 3 girls you only just met. I didn't only just meet them, Jacob said. Thinking of Ruth's small, stubborn chin and Mary's off-key singing and Eliza's cold hand finding his without asking permission, feels like I've known them a good deal longer than 4 days. There was a public reckoning to it, of course. The kind small towns always demand a hearing before the circuit judge when he came through in February. Neighbors murmuring about a grieving widower taking in 3 strange girls with no wife in the house to help raise them. Some outright saying it wasn't fitting, wasn't proper. That a man alone had no business with daughters he didn't sire. Jacob stood in that cold little courthouse room with his hat in his hands and every eye in town on him, and felt more exposed than he had in years. More exposed than he'd felt even at Sarah's funeral. Because at least grief was a thing folks understood. Hope apparently needed defending. I lost my wife to winter's back, he told the judge, voice carrying steady, though his hands weren't quite as steady as he wanted. Lost to children before that, before they ever drew breath. I stopped believing my house was meant to hold anybody living in it. 3 girls showed up half frozen on my porch on Christmas Eve, and I have not had one night's sleep since where I did not thank God for the knocking. I am asking this court to let me raise them as my own. And I will stand up in front of every soul in this town and every soul that doubts me and tell them the same thing. I have more room in me for these girls than I have had for anything in 2 years. And I am not about to let pride or gossip or grief talk me out of the first good thing that has walked through my door since I buried my wife. The judge, an older man with tired eyes who'd clearly seen every kind of family trouble a territory could produce, looked out at the 3 girls sitting straight-backed on the front bench, Ruth's arm around Eliza, Mary swinging her feet, and then looked back at Jacob a long moment. Mr. Hale, he said finally, I've signed papers all winter for men leaving families and precious few for men taking families on. Court finds in favor of the petition. The room exhaled. Ruth cried again, quieter this time, happier tears. And Mary whooped loud enough that the judge had to bang his little wooden hammer just to keep order. And Jacob, walking down that aisle with 3 girls suddenly, legally, permanently his, felt something in his chest that had been locked up tight since Sarah's fever finally come open all the way. Like a window thrown wide after a long, cold season shut up indoors. That next Christmas, the house did not sit dark and quiet. Jacob cut the biggest pine he could find on the property and dragged it in himself. And the front room filled up with cranberry strings and crooked paper stars Mary cut with the kitchen shears. And Sarah's little stocking with the crooked S hung on the mantel alongside 3 new ones Vivian had helped the girls sew. R&M and E stitched just as crooked and just as loved. Eliza said the Christmas prayer out loud this time, not a whisper, standing tall by the fire while her sisters bowed their heads. And when she finished, she looked over at Jacob like she was checking whether it was still all right. It's more than all right, he told her, and found his voice thick again. The good kind of thick. It's exactly right. Outside, snow fell soft and steady over the ranch. The same kind of snow that had once carried 3 shivering girls to a stranger's door and asked nothing of him but warmth, and gotten, in the end, a whole life instead. Jacob stood at the window a while, watching it fall, thinking of Sarah. The way he did every year now, but different, lighter, like sharing the memory instead of guarding it. He thought she'd have liked the noise. He thought she'd have liked the singing, even Mary's. Wrong notes and all. He didn't need to imagine what she'd have thought about the girls. He already knew. That night, long after the girls had fallen asleep, tangled together by the dying fire. worn out from cookies and carols and the particular exhaustion that only comes from being loved all the way through a day. Jacob banked the coals low and stood a moment in the doorway of the room that used to sit empty, listening to 3 sets of breathing fill up a space that silence had owned for 2 long years. And he thought, not for the first time, that grief and joy could live in the very same house, so long as somebody was brave enough to leave the door unlocked.